All right, welcome back. It is time for our State House Insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Guys, let's dive into some issues making headlines this week. We'll begin with the Corrections Department, as Brian Sterling's going to get tens of millions of dollars for improvements over there, something he's been asking for a long time, Dave.
Brian Sterling has been doing a phenomenal job at the Department of Corrections. I mean, he has taken an agency. We have the best recidivism rate in America, which means we've got fewer people going back to prison than any other state in America. And Brian Sterling is a primary reason that is going on, and the strategies that he's been doing since he's been at the Department of Corrections. This is a great move, and it will be an important investment that needs to be made to continue the great work that he's been doing.
Well, I commend the General Assembly for stepping up to the plate, funding governmental agencies like corrections. It was the Republican leadership that cut these agencies to the bare bone and expected these magnificent results with working with less. So I appreciate that. I also give thanks to the majority in the United States Congress and President Joe Biden. The reason we're able to fund agencies like this and give out funds to governmental agencies is because of the American Rescue Act, which, by the way, 0 Republicans voted for in Washington, D.C., including the South Carolina delegation, but it is helping the function and the flow of state government in South Carolina. I also hope and pray that that continued spirit of funding governmental agencies continue to exist with other agencies like DJJ, which lawmakers had refused to fund in the past, like DSS, which we know is critical, and other governmental agencies that have been cut through the bone thanks to the Republican-controlled General Assembly, who are trying to prove a political talking point.
As we speak of a lot of money, $300 million in all is what Governor McMaster wants to allocate for I-73. Right now, that interstate is in North Carolina. They want to connect it to Myrtle Beach. $300 million, a lot of money, Antoine. Is that something that's going to happen in South Carolina?
Well, we don't know. What we do know is there's a bipartisan infrastructure bill pending in D.C. that some of the South Carolina delegation support. We know Mr. Whip Clyburn is a full supporter. I think Senator Graham is a supporter. Other members of the delegation, not so much. We also know there's a potential pending reconciliation package that would send those evil federal dollars that Governor McMaster and so many other Republicans in South Carolina love to talk about, but they have no bones and no apologies about allocating or pre-allocating those dollars to implement some of the things they want to do. I wish there would have been some discussion about allocating those dollars so human capital can have some serious investments in the state. We have so many needs in our state. We're a very poor state. We're a very rural state. And if you ask any average person who's been around the state of South Carolina for a lap or two, they would tell you that rural South Carolina needs an infusion of cash, probably more so than some of the other parts of the state, like Myrtle Beach.
I think when you take a look at the fact that the #1 industry in South Carolina is tourism, more dollars flow into South Carolina from tourism than everything else except probably agriculture. And when we think about that, I-73 is a direct pipeline of dollars that flows directly into South Carolina. And to Antoine's point, we need dollars that are going to be going to rural South Carolina, and those will be dollars going to rural South Carolina because the federal government is investing in a federal interstate program, and that's an important thing that needs to be done because that's an important aspect of building up our economy, which is an extremely important point that Republicans continue to drive home, that we need to figure out what needs to be done and invest dollars wisely to get that return on investment that we've been looking for.
Dave, I'll say 2 things to that point. Number one, I hope you will agree with me and thank President Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress who are sending this federal money to South Carolina. I hope you'll agree that that is a very important step. Otherwise, that would not have happened. And to your point about investments in rural South Carolina, when these investments happen, they may make it to rural South Carolina, but they don't always make it to the people of rural South Carolina. And so when we build highways, when we expand interstates, when we bring jobs to industry, sometimes communities, a lot of communities, a lot of people that make up those communities, generations of people are left out. I'm from Swansea, South Carolina. I know what that feels like. I know a lot of people, when industry comes to a regional area, everyone does not benefit. And so we have to be real creative when it comes to economic development. And while I love the fact that you say Republicans want to make investments, truth be told, Democrats want the same thing. We want to put people to work. We want people to have jobs. We want people to be able to raise their family. We want people to have food on their table. But we also know oftentimes the communities that reflective of those who look like me get left out of the conversation, Dave. And I think that's where the frustration is. And then you have Republicans who want to take credit for making these economic development investments. However, they do not want to support what it takes to get them there. As I said earlier, 0 Republicans want to support the reconciliation package pending in the Congress. 0 of them supported the American Rescue Act that brought billions of dollars.
And Antoine, I think what we need to start doing is we need to start having a conversation that's less partisan and more talking about what we actually need to be doing in South Carolina instead of trying to pin it on Republicans and Democrats. Because the reality is, as Americans, as South Carolinians, it's important for us to work together on finding these solutions. And I think this is a place where you and I would both agree it's an important investment that needs to be done.
Dave, I would love to work with you. However, I would love for you to work with some of the members of your congressional delegation and say, you know what? South Carolina is in need. Please govern yourself accordingly, as they say in the Baptist church, and vote for these bills that will make it their ways to South Carolina.
We have about 90 seconds left, and I want to mention Jim Clyburn. He was in Columbia earlier this week endorsing Tamika Isaac Devine for mayor of Columbia. Of course, you mentioned the president earlier, Antoine. Clyburn credited with pushing Biden to the nomination and for the victory here, not only in South Carolina, but nationwide. Is his endorsement, do you believe, going to have any impact here in the capital city?
I certainly think it will have impact in the same way that the current mayor of Columbia's endorsement of candidate Sam Johnson will have impact. What impact the two of those have when they collide, I think the voters of Columbia will decide. I'm totally convinced there will be a runoff because we have 4 or maybe even 5 credible candidates in the race, and they're all going to pull from several different places and constituencies. And so there's a lot of ball left to be played as we near the November election here in Columbia.
It will be very interesting to see how those sands shift themselves out over time, to see how the votes come down. Because as Antoine and JR, you have both said, Jim Clyburn is a kingmaker. The question is today, will he be the queen maker in South Carolina?
And we will find out. The city election coming up on Tuesday, November 2nd. Antoine and Dave, as always, thank you so very much for your time. All right.